Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the Moondrop Para, a $300 open-back, full-size, planar magnetic headphone. This was a kind loan to me from Apos Audio. Apos has asked nothing in exchange other than a fair and honest evaluation, which you are about to give. I will include an affiliate link down below in the description where you can buy this from Apos Audio. So if you like what I have to say about this product and you want to try it for yourself, please consider using that affiliate link and I will get a small kickback. However, all affiliate link money that I earn goes right back into the channel to keep it running and sock some of it away to buy cool gear to review. All right, this headphone is an interesting one. It can sound pretty good, but in terms of drivability at its price, it's a bit of a fish out of water. So I'm going to unpack all of that right here on the other side of shameless self-promotion. So let's go ahead and get to it.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
On paper, the Para looks very attractive because I will link you to Apos's website where you can buy this down below and also read the product literature that came from Moondrop. And again, on paper, this seems really fascinating, really cool. It, planar magnetic, full size for $300 US. They talk about like the driver technology and the magnet array and all of that. There's even a pretty slick pad removal and rolling system. I mean, it's magnetic here. There's a plate on the back of the pads that pulls right out, and then like there's another set of pads in the box. These are like a protein leather probably and Alcantara hybrid here, and then these are a micro perf. But anyway, you pull that metal disc out of there and you put the new pad on it, and then you just magnetically plop the pads right back in place. So I mean, there's some cool things about this headphone that make it exciting on paper. And then it says on the Apos website that with an 8 ohm and 100 decibel decibel per 1 volt RMS input, it says that it's easy to drive and highly sensitive. No. Okay, and therein lies the problem. 8 ohms makes it sound like it should be pretty easy to drive, accepting the fact that most headphone amps, particularly headphone amps that are under, say, $500 US, which would be the price of amps that I would, think about pairing a $300 headphone with, tend to not handle 8 ohm loads very well. They really are more in their comfort zone when you get to 16 ohms and higher. Lower teen loads like Odyssey, LCDX, I think is somewhere around 12, 13 ohms. And Odyssey has some models in there. Dan Clark has some models in there that are like lower teens of impedance. I think even the Hi-Fi Ananda Nano is like 13, 14, 15 ohms, somewhere in there as well. So I mean, those do exist, but if you go any lower than that, a lot of amps at the price start to freak out. And then the other part of this is the rated sensitivity of 101 decibel per volt RMS, not decibel per milliwatt. And this is key. A couple of online calculators that I looked at, one from Benchmark Audio and another one from Reference Audio Analyzer. And I'll go ahead and put links to those down in the description so you can check my work on this if you want to. But anyway, the Benchmark Audio says that this headphone converts to about an 80 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity, and Reference Audio Analyzer puts it at 86.5 decibels per milliwatt. Neither of those is particularly high, which means that the current draw of this headphone is a big part of its story. So I'm kind of laying out the basics here of what we're going to get to. And as I said at the top here, like the sound of the Para is not too bad. Once you get it on an amp that can handle it reasonably well, It's got a fairly detailed and relatively smooth sound most of the time. However, there are just relatively few amplifiers out there, particularly under $500, that are going to power it well, which to me, it just feels like it's a very awkward fit in the market, and that's why I described it a bit as a fish out of water. Okay, let's unpack all of this in a little bit more detail. I won't go into a deep dive on the build and all of that. It does look okay. The comfort is decent. It's got an easy pad rolling system. We've got a suspension strap headband system here. You've got these small holes here on the back of the grill, so it's just pretty simple cup housing and so forth. To give you a little bit better view, here's what the driver assembly looks like and all that. It's pretty reflective, so pardon if my room is messy behind it, just nature of being a reviewer, boxes everywhere, okay? But that's what it looks like in there, which is kind of cool. All right, and it's got dual 3.5 millimeter cable entry on the cup, so pretty wide compatibility with aftermarket cables. The cable that comes with it is terminated 3.5 millimeter TRS on the amp end and then dual 3.5 millimeter TRS on the headphone end. I didn't use it much. It's okay. I ended up using Hart cables with various adapters to go into a bunch of different amps because I tried a bunch of different amps on this. Okay, so let's talk about test gear real quick, and then we'll just get into my points on this about why it's a fish out of water. So some of the amplifiers that I use to try to drive this thing, and it really goes a wide range of price. Schiit Magna Unity, KN N6 Mark II DAP, Cord Hugo 2, right? Let's see, what else is a desktop gear in there? I mean, other than the Magna Unity, I went all the way up to some pretty expensive amps, like Hi-Fi Golden Wave Prelude, which is $2,500 US, a Violectric HPA V281, $2,800 US, and I have in for review the also by Lake People, but it's the Nimbus US5, and I forget exactly what the MSRP of that is, but I'm pretty sure it's north of 5K. Okay. So a fairly wide range in price there from the Magna Unity all the way up through those. I also powered this with the Hi-Fi DAC amps that I just recently reviewed, the EF499 and the EF500. And then I also got my KN HA1A Mark II tube amp to try to power this, because that amp, I don't think many people realize how much of a brute that it is for an under $1,000 headphone amp. But it really brings a lot of power, and so that's why I busted that out for this one. Here's the thing. What is the sound signature on the Para? And I'm going to confess that I am not 100% sure. And that is because the 8 ohm of impedance, and not only is it 8 ohms, it's also spec'd at having a tolerance of 15%, meaning plus or minus 15% from 8 ohms there in its impedance rating. So the headphone could vary from as low as 6.8 ohms all the way up to 9.2 ohms. Now, that's not a huge gap in terms of just number of ohms, but if you're talking about an amplifier driving a low impedance load, that is a big difference. So what I noticed is that on almost all of the amps that I tried, particularly those that were the cheaper amps, okay, that I mentioned there, and also on the mobile amps, like the KN N6 Mark II, the Hugo 2, you get a very bass lean sound signature. The treble is usually nice and smooth most of the time. It can get a little bit sibilant and fatiguing here and there on various amps, but when it's powered appropriately for the treble part anyway, it's pretty smooth, well tonally balanced. The mid-range also not too bad, pretty smooth, reasonably natural, and all of that. There is a lot of detail retrieval from this headphone. It is a bit more of a detail retrieval, detail forward kind of presentation. Regardless of amp, it's just there's a lot of the detail and sound, and it's pushed forward a little bit in the presentation. Some people may like that, others don't. I kind of enjoyed that, but it did get a little bit fatiguing for me after a while. That bass, though, is often very lean, and so when the amp that this is connected to can't deliver the current that it needs, which is a lot, okay, which is a lot, There's not a whole lot of low bass impact or extension or presence. It's just very bass lean and kind of thin in the low end. Kick drum hits get a little splashy and distorted, and that sort of thing. Okay, and all of that. So where the difficulty of drive comes out mostly is in that low end, but also the spatial presentation. With a little bit more power, then there's just a little bit better separation of sonic images and all that, and it starts to sound more three-dimensional and holographic. But it also is simultaneously a little bit amp picky. Like my HPA V281, Vioelectric, again, like that one, it's got a ton of power, right? And it drives, you know, some pretty tough to drive planar headphones reasonably well, like the Susvara and the HE6 series and like the Modhouse Tungsten come to mind. But those all need more voltage than they need current. This is more of a current drive kind of headphone right here. And the Vio the V281 handled its low end pretty well. That had some of the most robust and full bass that I've heard from this headphone, from that amp. However, the mid-range and the treble got harsh on that particular amplifier. So like there was probably a synergy issue of some sort on there that I'm not sure what was going on. So on other amps, like the Prelude and the US5, for example, even the K&H A1A Mark II, for the most part struck a fairly good balance of being smooth through the mids and the treble and having some bass presence and a little bit of impact. I get the sense this is never going to be a super impactful or, you know, slamming kind of headphone. Hey, but the impact becomes okay on those other amps. Even on those, like, the sound was pretty good, but it wasn't stellar. In my opinion, it doesn't really catch the sound that something like a Hi-Fi Man Sundara is going to give you if you snag an Ananda Nano on sale or an Edition XS down around those price. Like, I don't think this is going to compete with those. The Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm, the Massdrop Sennheiser HD6XX, like those are other examples of headphones that I just think I overall prefer to this one, even though this one isn't bad. It's fairly decent there. That point that I'm making there is like when you combine that, even at what I think, and I'm hedging on this because of the whole difficulty of drive thing, but I think it sounds relatively decent, but not enough for me to recommend it to people and to start going down the rabbit hole of just figuring out what the heck you're going to drive it with. Because I don't know, okay? I don't know there at this price. So it can sound okay. It really can. It doesn't really ever sound wonderful to me, I think. Somebody will ask, did I try a speaker amp? I guess those amps that I mentioned sound really powerful, are pretty powerful. The K&H A1A Mark II, that one, like even though the bass was nice and full, I started hearing some distortion in the bass on that, and I don't know if that's because of the headphone or if it's because of like just this was just drawing too much current and the K&'s power supply was overloaded on current draw. I'm not sure. Okay, but it just comes back to, and did I use a speaker amp? I don't have adapter cables for that. And for a $300 headphone, I just straight up don't think you should have to buy adapter cables or make adapter cables to be able to drive your headphone. Once you're getting into $2,000 or more, where the tungsten is like up, and then the Susvara up even higher than that, it's like, okay, now you're spending serious money on your signal chain too, and you're being very careful about signal chain building and amp matching and all those kinds of things. Most people aren't doing that kind of stuff at $300 US. I think it just needs to be an easier to drive unit, a more amp friendly unit at that price. So that's kind of my takeaway on this. It sounds decent when it's driven properly, but good luck driving it properly for under $500. And it's hard for me to recommend anyone chasing the dragon on this one or going down the rabbit hole, whatever expression you want to use, to try to find that one amp under 500 bucks to match your $300 headphone, because I don't know how many amps you're going to have to try to be able to get there, and it might be a lot. Okay. So I'll go ahead and leave it there. I'm Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Moondrop Para. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Check out my PayPal and my Patreon, and generally do those things you do to support YouTube channel. So thanks once again for watching, and as always, enjoy the music.